Single Dad Mechanic was asked to pilot the spaceship as a joke, but what he did shocked everyone. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the dimly lit maintenance bay of the GCS Horizon, Derek Vaughn tightened the last bolt on the navigation console with practiced precision, his calloused hands moving with a rhythm born of 15 years of experience. "Nav systems back online, Commander," Derek said, wiping the grease from his hands onto his already stained jumpsuit. The patch on his chest read Chief Mechanic beneath the Global Coalition Space Force emblem, a position he'd earned through years of hard work and a natural talent for making broken things work again. Commander Elena Shaw nodded curtly. "Good work, Vaughn." The bridge crew was getting antsy without it. Her eyes fell to the small photo tucked into Derek's toolkit. A smiling 8-year-old boy with his father's dark hair and determined chin. "How's Mason doing?" Derek's face softened at the mention of his son. "Good days and bad days. More good lately, though." He didn't elaborate further. Everyone on the horizon knew about his wife's death 3 years ago and the struggle of raising a child alone while serving on an interstellar vessel. The arrangement was unusual, but after proving himself indispensable during the Centauri crisis, the GCSF had made accommodations. "Glad to hear it." Commander Shaw's communicator beeped. "I need to get back to the bridge. We're approaching the Vega system in 6 hours." After Shaw left, Derek packed his tools and headed to his quarters. Mason would be finishing his virtual schooling soon, and Derek had promised to help him with his science project before dinner. As he walked through the curved corridors of the massive exploration vessel, various crew members greeted him with nods of respect. Derek might not have been an officer, but everyone knew that when systems failed, he was the one who could get them running again. His quarters were modest but comfortable. The GCSF had connected 2 standard crew rooms to give Mason his own space, a small compensation for growing up among the stars rather than on Earth. "Dad." Mason launched himself into Derek's arms the moment the door slid open. "Mr. Patterson says my gravitational field model is the best in class." Derek grinned, lifting his son into a bear hug. "That's my boy. Want to show me after dinner?" Their evening routine was well established. Dinner in the smaller mess hall reserved for families, helping with homework, and then an hour of exploring the ship's permitted areas or visiting the observation deck to look at the stars. Tonight, they chose the observation deck. "Where are we going next, Dad?" Mason asked, his face pressed against the reinforced glass as he gazed at the swirling cosmos beyond. "The Vega system," Derek replied, sitting beside his son. "It's about 25 light years from Earth. There's a planet there that might have water. Like our mission to find new homes." Derek nodded. "Exactly like that. Earth is getting crowded, and our resources are stretched thin. We're looking for places where humans might live someday." Mason considered this thoughtfully. "Will we live there?" Derek ruffled his son's hair. "Not right away, buddy. First, we explore, then scientists study, and then maybe, someday, people will build cities there." As they talked, Derek's communicator buzzed, an alert for all senior maintenance staff. He checked the message and sighed. "Got to go, bud. There's an issue with the auxiliary propulsion system." Mason's face fell, but he nodded bravely. "I'll finish my model while you're gone." Derek dropped Mason off with Ensign Torres, who often helped with childcare during emergencies, and hurried to engineering. The scene that greeted him was one of controlled chaos. Chief Engineer Ramos gestured Derek over to a diagnostic panel. "We've got fluctuations in the deuterium flow. If we don't stabilize it before the jump to FTL, we could blow out half the drive system." For the next 4 hours, Derek and the engineering team worked frantically to identify and repair the problem. It was intricate work, requiring both technical knowledge and intuition. While the engineers handled the theoretical aspects, Derek crawled through access tunnels, replaced damaged components, and made manual adjustments that the automated systems couldn't manage. By the time they finished, Derek's uniform was soaked with sweat. His hands were bleeding from a tight space he'd had to squeeze through, but the propulsion system was running at optimal efficiency. "I don't know how you do it, Vaughn," Ramos said, clapping him on the shoulder. You've got a sixth sense for these machines. Derek shrugged. Just experience. But they both knew it was more than that. Derek possessed an uncanny ability to understand mechanical systems, to feel the rhythm of the ship's heart and know exactly what it needed. When he returned to their quarters, he found Mason asleep, surrounded by the components of his science project. Gently, Derek carried his son to bed, tucked him in, and kissed his forehead before collapsing into his own bunk. The next morning, the ship's alert system woke everyone at 0600 hours. The horizon had arrived at the Vega system. Derek and Mason ate breakfast quickly, both excited for different reasons. Mason was eager to see a new solar system through the observation deck windows, while Derek had a list of maintenance tasks to complete now that they'd exited FTL travel. "Can I come see you at lunch?" Mason asked as they prepared to part ways for the morning. "Sure thing, buddy. Meet me in engineering at 1300 hours. Derek was deep in the recalibration of a thermal regulator when Commander Shaw's voice came over the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is Commander Shaw. We have detected an unidentified vessel on an intercept course. We have attempted communication with no response. All personnel to battle stations. Civilian passengers and dependents to secure quarters immediately." Derek's heart raced as he abandoned his work and sprinted toward the school section. By the time he arrived, Ensign Torres was already leading the children toward the designated shelter area. "Dad," Mason broke from the line and ran to Derek. Derek knelt and gripped his son's shoulders. "Mason, you need to go with Ensign Torres. I have to help make sure the ship is safe." "But what if?" Mason's eyes were wide with fear. "Hey, remember what we talked about? When there's an emergency, I follow instructions and stay safe." Mason finished, his voice small but determined. "That's right. I'll come get you as soon as I can." With a final hug, Derek sent Mason off with the other children and raced to engineering. The ship's corridors were a flurry of activity as crew members rushed to their stations. In engineering, the atmosphere was tense. Chief Engineer Ramos was barking orders as technicians prepared the ship's defensive systems. "Vaughn, thank God. We need to reroute power to the shield generators. They're drawing too much from life support." For the next 30 minutes, Derek worked feverishly, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. The ship shuddered occasionally, whether from evasive maneuvers or weapons fire, he couldn't tell. Then Commander Shaw's voice came over the engineering comm. "Ramos, we've lost main helm control. The primary navigation array took a direct hit." "What about auxiliary?" Ramos asked. "Offline. We need manual control immediately, or we're sitting ducks." Ramos cursed. "Our helm specialists are trapped in Section 4 after that last hit. The emergency bulkheads are down." There was a moment of silence, then Shaw's voice again. "Who else can pilot this ship?" Derek stepped forward before he could think better of it. "Commander, I've run thousands of diagnostic tests on the manual flight systems. I know how they work." Ramos stared at him. Knowing how they work and flying a 500,000-ton spacecraft are two very different things, Vaughn. "Sir, with respect, I also logged over 200 hours in the flight simulator. It was part of my certification for full systems diagnostics." This wasn't entirely accurate. Derek had indeed used the simulator, but largely because he found it fascinating, not because it was required. He'd always been drawn to flying, though his background and lack of formal education had directed him toward mechanics instead. There was another pregnant pause before Shaw responded. "Send him up. We're out of options." As Derek sprinted toward the bridge, the ship rocked violently, throwing him against a wall. The lighting flickered, and emergency alarms blared. Whatever was attacking them, it meant business. The bridge was in chaos when he arrived. Through the main viewport, Derek could see a sleek, predatory-looking vessel maneuvering around them, firing energy weapons that splashed against the horizon's weakening shields. "Vaughn, take the helm." Shaw pointed to the pilot station, where the console was sparking and partially disassembled. "What happened?" Derek asked, already dropping to his knees to examine the damage. "Direct energy surge through the control circuits," explained Lieutenant Kim, the communications officer. "We've lost most of the interface." Derek assessed the situation quickly. I can bypass the main control circuit and create a direct manual link, but I'll need to reroute through the secondary processors. Shaw raised an eyebrow. In English, Vaughn? I can fix it enough to fly, ma'am, but it won't be pretty. We don't need pretty. We need to not die. Derek nodded and got to work. His fingers moved with practiced precision, disconnecting damaged components and creating new pathways for the control signals. In less than 5 minutes, he had a rudimentary control system operational. It's ready, he announced, sliding into the pilot's seat. The makeshift controls responded to his touch, though sluggishly. But I should warn you, the response time will be delayed by about 0.8 seconds. Shaw's expression was grim. Just keep us alive. Our priority is to protect the civilians and get to the jump point. Derek took a deep breath and wrapped his hands around the control yoke. The massive ship felt unwieldy under his command, like trying to steer an ocean liner with a rowboat paddle. But he could feel the rhythm of it, the way the propulsion system pushed against the void, the subtle vibrations that indicated stress on the hull. The enemy vessel fired another volley, and Derek instinctively pulled the horizon into a roll, a maneuver the exploration vessel was never designed to perform. Alarms blared as the structural integrity systems registered the unusual stress, but the ship held together, and the enemy's shots went wide. "How did you do that?" Lieutenant Reyes, the tactical officer, gasped. "This ship shouldn't be able to maneuver like that." Derek didn't respond, too focused on the controls and the enemy's movements. He had always understood machines at an intuitive level, and now he was feeling his way through the Horizon's capabilities, pushing the massive vessel in ways its designers had never intended. For 20 tense minutes, Derek played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the attacking ship. The Horizon was bigger and more heavily armored, but the enemy was faster and more agile. Derek compensated by using the Horizon's mass to his advantage, executing maneuvers that allowed the momentum of the huge ship to carry them through turns that would otherwise be impossible. "We've identified the vessel," Lieutenant Kim announced. "It's Krell design, mercenary class." "Krell?" Shaw's voice was sharp. "What are they doing this far from their territory?" "Unknown, Commander, but they're charging weapons again." Derek narrowed his eyes, watching the enemy vessel's approach vector. "Commander, permission to try something unorthodox?" Shaw hesitated only briefly. "Granted, Vaughn. Do what you need to do." Derek nodded and initiated a sequence of commands. "Lieutenant Reyes, when I give the word, I need you to vent plasma from the port nacelles. That'll drop our shield strength by 30%. Reyes protested. "Just for a moment," Derek assured him. "Trust me." As the Krell ship swooped in for another attack run, Derek waited until the last possible moment. "Now," Reyes complied, and a cloud of superheated plasma erupted from the Horizon's port side, directly into the path of the oncoming Krell vessel. The enemy ship's sensors, calibrated for energy weapons and solid projectiles, failed to properly register the plasma cloud until it was too late. The Krell ship plunged into the plasma, its shields flaring brightly as they tried to compensate for the unexpected thermal stress. In that moment of distraction, Derek yanked the Horizon into a tight turn and Reyes fired a full spread of defensive countermeasures. The explosion rocked the bridge, and for a moment, everyone held their breath. When the view screen cleared, the Krell ship was drifting, its engines dark and its weapons offline. "Direct hit to their propulsion system," Reyes reported, unable to keep the awe from his voice. "They're disabled." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Derek wasn't celebrating. His thoughts had already turned to Mason, waiting in the secure area, probably terrified. "Permission to check on my son, Commander?" he asked, already rising from the pilot's seat. Shaw nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Go ahead, Vaughn. And good work. I don't know many trained pilots who could have pulled off what you just did." Derek hurried to the secure area, his heart still pounding from the adrenaline of battle. He found Mason sitting with the other children, clutching his model gravitational field to his chest like a shield. "Dad." Mason launched himself into Derek's arms, and Derek held him tight, the reality of how close they'd come to disaster washing over him. It's okay, buddy. We're safe now. Later that evening, after Mason had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's excitement and fear, Derek's communicator buzzed with a message from Commander Shaw. Report to the bridge at 0800 tomorrow. We need to discuss your new assignment. Derek stared at the message, uncertain what to make of it. Had he overstepped? Done something wrong? The thought of disciplinary action made his stomach clench, not for himself, but for Mason. They couldn't afford to lose his position on the horizon. The next morning, Derek arrived on the bridge precisely at 0800, his uniform freshly cleaned despite the shortages caused by the battle damage. Commander Shaw was waiting with Captain Harris, the Horizon's commanding officer who had been in the Strategic Command Center during the attack. Both turned as Derek entered. Chief Mechanic Vaughn, Captain Harris greeted him. I've been hearing quite a story about your actions yesterday. Derek stood at attention. Sir, I know I may have exceeded my authority, but... Harris held up a hand. At ease, Vaughn. You're not in trouble. Quite the opposite. Derek relaxed slightly, but remained wary. In his experience, unexpected conversations with superior officers rarely ended well. We've been reviewing the flight recorder data, Shaw explained. Your maneuvers yesterday were unprecedented. The Horizon wasn't designed to move like that. I just did what seemed necessary, ma'am. Captain Harris studied him intently. Commander Shaw tells me you have no formal flight training beyond standard simulators. That's correct, sir. Then what you did wasn't just impressive, it was extraordinary. Natural talent like that doesn't come along often. Derek shifted uncomfortably under the praise. Thank you, sir. Here's the situation, Vaughn, Harris continued. We lost 2 of our helm officers in the attack. 1 dead, 1 critically injured. We're 5 weeks from the nearest starbase at maximum sustainable speed. I understand, sir. We need someone at the helm who can handle this ship if we encounter those Krell again, or worse. Someone who understands not just the controls, but the heart of the ship. Harris leaned forward. I want you to train with Lieutenant Chun, our remaining helm officer, effective immediately. Derek blinked in surprise. Sir, I'm a mechanic. My duties will be redistributed, Shaw interjected. This is a direct order, Vaughn. The safety of this ship and everyone aboard may depend on it. Derek thought about Mason, about all the families aboard the Horizon. Yes, sir. I understand. Good, Harris nodded. Report to Lieutenant Chun after your shift today. And Vaughn. Sir, what you did yesterday, saving this ship using nothing but mechanical intuition and raw talent. That's the kind of thinking we need more of in the GCSF. When we return to Earth, I'm recommending you for officer training if you want it. Derek left the bridge in a daze. Officer training? Him? A high school dropout from the Montana Reclamation Zone who'd learned mechanics, keeping ancient farm equipment running? It seemed impossible. But as he walked through the ship toward engineering, crew members he passed nodded respectfully or even stopped to thank him. Word had spread about the mechanic who had outmaneuvered a Krell attack ship. By the time he reached engineering, Derek had made his decision. For Mason's sake, for the crew of the Horizon, and maybe a little bit for himself, he would learn to fly. Lieutenant Chun turned out to be a stern taskmaster, but a fair one. For the next 3 weeks, Derek split his time between essential maintenance duties and intensive flight training. Chun was initially skeptical of the mechanic's abilities, but soon grew to respect Derek's intuitive understanding of the ship's systems. You feel the ship, Chun commented during one simulator session. Most pilots learn to read the instruments, then learn to feel the ship. You're doing it backward, but it works. Derek absorbed everything Chun taught him, combining it with his mechanical knowledge to develop a flying style that was unorthodox but effective. Where traditional pilots relied on established procedures and responses, Derek approached flying like a complex mechanical problem, anticipating how each system would interact with the others. Mason, meanwhile, had become something of a celebrity among the ship's children. My dad saved the ship, he would proudly tell anyone who would listen, and for once, Derek didn't mind the attention his son drew. The boy's confidence had grown, the shadow of grief that had followed him since his mother's death receding a little more each day. For weeks after the Krell attack, Long-range sensors detected 3 vessels on an intercept course. Krell signatures confirmed. Lieutenant Reyes reported grimly. Larger vessels this time. Warship class. Captain Harris turned to Derek, who had been manning the auxiliary engineering station on the bridge. Looks like your training is about to be put to the test, Vaughn. Take the helm. Lieutenant Chun nodded encouragingly as Derek moved to the pilot station and familiarized himself with the controls. They're hailing us, Kim announced. On screen, Harris ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a Krell commander. Humanoid, but with distinctly reptilian features, scales gleaming beneath the lights of his bridge. Global Coalition vessel, the Krell commander hissed. You have entered contested space and attacked a Krell enforcement vessel. Surrender and prepare to be boarded. Captain Harris stood. This is Captain Harris of the GCSF Horizon. We are on a peaceful exploration mission in unclaimed space. Your vessel attacked us without provocation. The Krell commander's eyes narrowed. The Vega system falls under Krell protection. Your presence here is a violation of our territorial claims. We have no record of any such claim, Harris replied. The Vega system is listed as unaligned in all diplomatic registries. Our claim is established by right of strength, the Krell commander snarled. Surrender your vessel or be destroyed. The transmission cut off abruptly. Tactical assessment. Harris demanded. Reyes studied his console. 3 warships, heavily armed. Their weapons are powering up. We're outgunned, sir. Vaughn. Harris turned to Derek. Can you get us out of here? Derek studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Not at full speed, sir. The damage from the last encounter hasn't been fully repaired. Options. Derek hesitated, then said, There's a dense asteroid field at the edge of the system. If we can reach it, I might be able to lose them there. Might. Shaw raised an eyebrow. It's risky, Derek admitted. But those warships are larger and less maneuverable than the Horizon. It's our best chance. Harris nodded. Do it. As Derek engaged the engines, the 3 Krell warships moved to intercept, their weapons firing in coordinated salvos. The Horizon shuddered under the assault. Shields at 70%. Reyes called out. Derek ignored the alarms and focused on his flying. The Horizon responded to his commands smoothly, the result of 3 weeks of training and the adjustments he'd made to the control systems in his off hours. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic mass of tumbling rocks ranging from car size to larger than the Horizon itself. Are you sure about this? Shin asked quietly from beside him. Derek nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching danger. I've run simulations. It'll work. Simulations aren't reality, Shin warned. Reality is just physics, Derek replied. And physics I understand. As they reached the edge of the asteroid field, Derek reduced speed and began weaving the massive exploration vessel between the tumbling rocks with a precision that left the bridge crew holding their breath. Behind them, the Krell warships followed, but more cautiously. One took a glancing blow from a medium-sized asteroid and fell back, its shields flaring. They're still pursuing, but they've spread out to surround us, Reyes reported. Derek nodded, having anticipated this tactic. Captain, I need control of the mining charges in Cargo Bay 3. Harris frowned. Those are for geological sampling, not weapons. I'm aware, sir. But right now, we need every advantage. After a moment's hesitation, Harris nodded to Reyes. Transfer control to the helm. Derek continued to guide the ship deeper into the asteroid field, seemingly at random, but actually following a path he had calculated based on the gravitational interactions of the larger bodies. Sir, I'm picking up unusual readings from the center of the field, Kim reported. Some kind of energy signature. Magnify, Harris ordered. The view screen zoomed in on a cluster of larger asteroids. Among them floated what appeared to be an ancient derelict, a massive structure of unfamiliar design. Is that a ship? Shaw asked, leaning forward. Unknown, Kim replied. But it's the source of the energy readings. Derek studied the derelict, an idea forming. Captain, request permission to adjust course toward that structure. Harris hesitated, then nodded. Proceed, but with caution. Derek altered their trajectory, threading the horizon through increasingly narrow gaps between asteroids. The Krell ships continued their pursuit, though one had fallen significantly behind after suffering damage from the treacherous environment. As they approached the derelict, Derek activated the mining charges, setting their yield to minimum and releasing them in a carefully planned pattern behind the horizon. "What are you doing?" Chen asked. "Creating a distraction," Derek replied, his fingers dancing over the controls as he remotely detonated the charges. The explosions were relatively small, but in the confined space of the asteroid field, they created a chain reaction. Smaller rocks were propelled in all directions, and one particularly large asteroid was nudged into a new trajectory, directly toward one of the pursuing Krell vessels. The Krell ship attempted to evade, but miscalculated. The asteroid struck it amidships, sending it spinning away, shields collapsed and hull breached. "One down," Reyes announced, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. But the two remaining Krell warships were still in pursuit, and they were closing the gap, their weapons firing whenever they had a clear shot. The horizon's shields were weakening under the sustained assault. "We can't outrun them much longer," Shaw warned. Derek narrowed his eyes, focusing on the derelict ahead. As they drew closer, he could see it was indeed a ship, or rather, a station, of enormous size and ancient design. Parts of it had been destroyed or worn away by countless impacts over what must have been millennia, but the central section appeared relatively intact. "Sir, I'm detecting a large opening in the structure," Kim reported. "Possibly a docking bay or hangar." Derek saw it too, a dark maw on the side of the station, large enough to accommodate the horizon. "Captain, permission to take us inside." "Inside?" Harris stared at him. "We have no idea what's in there. It could be a trap." "It's our best option," Derek insisted. "The Krell won't expect it, and the structure might provide some protection from their weapons." Harris looked to Shaw, who nodded reluctantly. "It's a gamble, but so is staying out here with failing shields." "Proceed, Vaughn," Harris ordered. "But be ready to reverse course at my command." Derek adjusted their trajectory, aiming for the opening. As they approached, ancient lights within the structure flickered to life, as if responding to their presence. "Sir, the energy readings are spiking," Kim reported, his voice tense. "Something's powering up inside the station." "Hold course," Harris commanded, though Derek could hear the uncertainty in his voice. The horizon slipped into the cavernous opening, the darkness of space replaced by the eerie glow of ancient illumination systems coming back to life after untold ages of dormancy. The interior was vast, a docking bay large enough to hold a dozen ships the size of the horizon. "The Krell are still following," Reyes warned. "They're entering the structure behind us." Derek guided the ship deeper into the station, following a wide corridor that seemed designed for vessels to traverse. The architecture was unlike anything in human or known alien records, organic yet mathematical, with swooping arches and precisely angled surfaces that gleamed with an inner light. "Sir, I'm detecting a massive power source ahead," Kim reported. "And there's a transmission being directed at our systems." "Transmission?" Harris turned sharply. "From whom? Is it the Krell?" "Negative, sir. It's coming from the station itself. It appears to be interfacing with our computers." Derek felt a strange sensation, a subtle vibration through the helm controls, not physical, but almost conscious. The ship's systems were responding to commands he hadn't given, displays flickering with symbols he didn't recognize. "We're being scanned," Kim confirmed, his fingers flying over his console. "The station's AI, or whatever it is examining our database." "Can you block it?" Harris demanded. "I'm trying, sir, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's not hacking. It's communicating at a fundamental level with our systems." Derek watched, fascinated, as the strange symbols continued to flash across his display. Then, suddenly, they resolved into standard English. "Compatible technology detected. Pilot interface available." "Sir," Derek called out, "I think it's offering to help." Before Harris could respond, The ship shuddered as a Krell energy blast struck their aft shields. Shields at 30%. Reyes called out. They've got a clear shot at us in this corridor. Derek made a split-second decision. I'm accepting the interface. Vaughn, wait, Harris began, but Derek had already pressed the flashing confirmation icon on his display. Instantly, Derek felt a surge of information flood his consciousness, not overwhelming but clarifying, as if someone had suddenly turned on all the lights in a dimly lit room. He could feel the horizon more completely than ever before, but also the station around them, its ancient systems awakening to his touch. I can control the station's defensive systems, he reported, his voice distant even to his own ears as he processed the new connection. Activating now. Throughout the massive structure, defense turrets that had lain dormant for millennia powered up, targeting the Krell vessels that had followed the horizon inside. Concentrated energy beams lanced out, striking with devastating precision. On the tactical display, one of the Krell ships winked out immediately. The other attempted to retreat, but was caught in a crossfire and disabled, drifting powerless within the station's vast interior. Threats neutralized, Derek announced, gradually returning to full awareness of his surroundings. The interface was fading, the connection withdrawing as the immediate danger passed. The bridge was silent, every officer staring at him in astonishment. What just happened? Shaw finally asked. Derek shook his head, trying to organize his thoughts. The station, it recognized our technology as compatible. It offered an interface, and I accepted. I could control its defensive systems temporarily. Compatible technology? Harris frowned. This station must be thousands, maybe millions of years old. How could our systems be compatible? Before Derek could respond, Kim spoke up. Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from the surviving Krell vessel. They're surrendering. Harris raised an eyebrow. Put them through. The Krell commander appeared on screen, his reptilian features contorted with what might have been fear. We yield to your superior technology, human vessel. The Krell hegemony had no knowledge of your control over the predecessor installation. Predecessor installation? Harris repeated. The Krell commander's eyes widened. You do not know? The ancient ones who seeded this galaxy with their knowledge? Whose technology forms the basis of all spacefaring civilizations. Harris glanced at Derek, then back to the screen. We only just discovered this structure. We have no prior claim to it. The Krell commander seemed confused. Yet your vessel interfaces with predecessor systems. This is unprecedented. No species has demonstrated such compatibility since the legends of the Forerunners. Forerunners? Shaw asked. But the Krell commander was no longer interested in explanations. We request permission to retrieve our survivors and withdraw from this system. The Krell hegemony will register no claim to the Vega system if your people desire it. Harris considered this, then nodded. Permission granted. But be advised, the global coalition does not seek conflict with the Krell. We are explorers, not conquerors. After the transmission ended, Harris turned to Derek. Explanations, Vaughn. Now, Derek described the interface experience as best he could. The sensation of connection, the flood of information, the intuitive control. It was like the station recognized something in our technology, he concluded. Or maybe in me. I don't know. Harris looked thoughtful. Kim, what did you find in the station's transmissions to our systems? The communications officer shook his head in wonder. It's still being decoded, sir, but preliminary analysis suggests the station was scanning for specific technological markers. When it found them in our systems, it established a connection. But why our systems? Shaw pressed. We're not an advanced civilization by galactic standards. Maybe that's not what it was looking for, Derek suggested. Maybe it was looking for something specific, something about how we approach technology. Harris nodded slowly. Whatever the case, we've stumbled onto something monumental. A station of unknown origin, apparently ancient beyond our reckoning, that interfaces with our technology. In response to our pilot, Shaw added, giving Derek a speculative look. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Sir, request permission to check on my son. After everything that's happened. Harris nodded. Granted, but report back in 2 hours. We have a lot to discuss about your future with the GCSF. As Derek left the bridge, he could hear the officers already discussing the implications of their discovery. A first contact situation unlike any humanity had encountered before, not with living aliens, but with the technological legacy of an ancient civilization that somehow recognized something in human technology. Or perhaps, Derek thought as he headed toward Mason's school section, something in humans themselves. 2 hours later, Derek returned to the bridge, having reassured Mason that they were safe and settled him with his homework. The mood had changed. Excitement and speculation had replaced the tension of battle. Scientists and officers huddled around displays, examining data from the ancient station. Captain Harris waved Derek over to where he stood with Commander Shaw and an unfamiliar woman in the charcoal gray uniform of GCSF intelligence. "Vaughn, this is Agent Lyra Winters. She has some questions about your experience with the station interface." The intelligence officer studied Derek with sharp blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Chief Mechanic Vaughn, your file makes for interesting reading." Derek straightened instinctively. "Ma'am." "Relax, Vaughn," Winters said with a thin smile. "You're not in trouble. Quite the opposite. You may have just made the most significant discovery in human history." Derek glanced at the captain, who nodded encouragingly. "We've begun preliminary analysis of the station," Winters continued. "It appears to be approximately 50,000 years old, though certain sections may be even older. The technology is extraordinary, far beyond our current capabilities, yet somehow compatible with our systems." "Compatible with Vaughn, specifically," Shaw interjected. "None of our other personnel have been able to establish the same level of connection." Winters nodded. "Which is why I'm here. The Coalition Council has authorized a full exploration mission. We need to understand what this station is, who built it, and why it responds to our technology, and to you." Derek shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, ma'am, I'm just a mechanic. I have responsibilities, my son." "Your son will be well taken care of," Harris assured him. "And you're no longer just a mechanic, Vaughn. As of this moment, you're being field commissioned as a lieutenant in the GCSF, with all associated benefits and responsibilities." Derek stared at him. "Sir, the paperwork is already being processed," Harris said. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Vaughn. Your first assignment is to lead the exploration of the predecessor station." Derek's mind reeled. A commissioned officer? It seemed impossible. Men like him, from the reclamation zones, without formal education, didn't become officers. They turned wrenches and fixed things that broke. Yet here he was, being handed an opportunity beyond his wildest dreams. But there was Mason to consider. "Sir, my son, will remain aboard the Horizon, which will maintain position near the station," Harris said. "You'll be part of a small team working directly on the station. Daily returns to the ship will be scheduled." Derek hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, sir. I accept." The next morning, Derek found himself aboard a shuttle heading toward the ancient station, accompanied by a team of 12 specialists, xenoarchaeologists, engineers, linguists, and GCSF security personnel. He wore a new uniform with lieutenant's insignia, still stiff and unfamiliar. "Still feels strange?" asked Dr. Elena Reyes, the team's lead xenoarchaeologist, noticing him adjusting his collar. Derek nodded. "Yesterday, I was tightening bolts in engineering. Today, I'm leading a first contact mission. It's a lot to process." Reyes smiled sympathetically. "If it helps, none of us have done this before either. First contact with an ancient alien civilization's technology? This is unprecedented." As their shuttle approached the massive docking bay where the Horizon had first entered, Derek felt a familiar sensation, a subtle awareness of the station's systems reaching out to him. It wasn't as intense as during the battle, but it was definitely present. "I can feel it again," he told Reyes. "The station knows we're here." The scientist's eyes widened. "You can sense it from this distance? Fascinating. Can you describe the sensation?" Derek struggled to find the words. "It's like hearing a faint melody. Not with my ears, but somehow in my mind. I can't make out the tune clearly, but I know it's there." Upon docking, the team suited up in environmental gear as a precaution, Though initial scans had shown the station maintained atmospheric conditions surprisingly close to Earth normal. As they exited the shuttle, lights activated along their path, illuminating corridors that might have been dark for millennia. "It's responding to our presence," Security Chief Mason Walsh observed, his hand resting on his sidearm. "No," Reyes corrected, studying her instruments. "It's responding to him." She nodded toward Derek. Derek stepped forward, feeling the connection strengthen. Symbols appeared on the walls, flowing, elegant glyphs that shifted and changed as he watched. "It's trying to communicate," said Dr. Sato, their linguist. "These symbols are reorganizing themselves, adapting to patterns it's extracting from our language database." Derek reached out and touched one of the glowing symbols. Instantly, the connection deepened, and understanding bloomed in his mind. "Welcome, inheritors," he said aloud, translating the message that had formed in his thoughts. "The legacy awaits those who are ready." The team stared at him in astonishment. "You can understand it?" Sato asked, incredulous. Derek nodded slowly. "When I touch the symbols, yes. It's communicating directly with me somehow. It called us inheritors." "Inheritors of what?" Walsh asked. Derek touched another symbol. "The mantle," he translated. "No, that's not quite right. The stewardship. Those who come after. The children." Reyes was frantically recording every word. "This is extraordinary. It seems to view humanity as some kind of successors. But why us?" Sato wondered. "And why now?" Derek continued following the illuminated path, the team close behind. The connection grew stronger with each step, fragments of knowledge filtering into his consciousness. Not overwhelming, but gradual, as if the station were careful not to overload his mind. They entered a vast chamber dominated by a central column of light that stretched from floor to ceiling. Around it were arranged what appeared to be control stations, their surfaces responding to Derek's proximity by lighting up with more symbols. "I think this is some kind of command center," Derek said, approaching the central column. As he neared it, the light pulsed, and a figure materialized, a holographic representation of a being unlike any they had seen before. It was humanoid but taller, with elongated limbs and a head that featured no visible eyes, yet gave the impression of serene awareness. Its body seemed composed of light and intricate patterns that shifted constantly. "Greetings, inheritor." The figure spoke, its voice resonating not through the air but directly in their minds. "I am custodian, sentinel of this archive." The team froze, staring at the apparition. Sato fumbled to activate her recording equipment. "We are humans," Derek responded, finding his voice. "From the planet Earth." Designation noted, the custodian acknowledged. "Your technological signatures identify you as inheritors. You have achieved the necessary developmental markers for initial access to the archive." "What is this archive?" Reyes asked, stepping forward. The custodian turned its featureless face toward her, but addressed its response to Derek. "The archive contains the accumulated knowledge of the predecessors, preserved for those who would come after. It has waited 53,429 standard cycles for compatible recipients." "Compatible how?" Derek asked. "Why does it respond to me specifically?" "Your neural patterns exhibit rare harmonic resonance with predecessor consciousness frameworks," the custodian explained. "This facilitates direct interface. Additionally, your technological development follows the path, the anticipated evolutionary course of sentient technical achievement." Derek glanced at his team, seeing his own amazement reflected in their expressions. "You've been waiting for a species like us? For over 50,000 years. The archive was designed to endure for 1,000,000 cycles if necessary," the custodian replied. "The predecessors understood that conscious evolution requires time and independent development. Premature access to advanced knowledge can be destructive." Reyes stepped forward again. "What happened to the predecessors? Why aren't they here themselves?" A momentary pause, and the holographic figure's patterns darkened slightly. "The predecessors transcended physical existence 53,429 cycles ago. Their consciousness evolved beyond material constraints. The archives were established throughout the galaxy to guide those who would follow when they were ready. Transcended? Sato echoed. You mean they died out? Death implies cessation. Transcendence is transformation. The distinction is significant. The custodian turned back to Derek. Inheritor, you have been identified as a compatible interface. You may access initial archive sectors. Your species' advancement will determine access to deeper knowledge over time. Derek felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What kind of knowledge are we talking about? The archive contains scientific, philosophical, historical, and technical knowledge spanning 20 million cycles of predecessor civilization. Access will be calibrated to your species' current development level to prevent destabilization. Walsh leaned close to Derek. Lieutenant, we should proceed with caution. This level of technology could radically alter the balance of power back home. Derek nodded, understanding the security chief's concerns. Earth was still recovering from decades of resource wars and environmental crises. Advanced alien technology could be a salvation or a catalyst for new conflicts. Custodian, Derek addressed the hologram. We are grateful for this opportunity, but we need time to understand what's being offered. Our species is still developing, still learning to use our existing technology responsibly. The custodian's patterns shifted to a warmer hue. Wisdom. The inheritors were predicted to exhibit caution upon first contact. This confirms compatibility. Can we return with more of our people? Scientists and leaders who can help us understand your knowledge properly. The archive will remain accessible to compatible interfaces. You may return with others, though direct neural access will remain limited to those with sufficient resonance patterns. After 4 hours of preliminary exploration and documentation, the team returned to the horizon, their minds buzzing with the implications of their discovery. A repository of knowledge from an advanced civilization that had apparently transcended physical existence, left behind specifically for species like humanity to find when they were ready. In the Horizons conference room, the team debriefed Captain Harris, Commander Shaw, and Agent Winters. So this custodian believes humanity has been following a predetermined technological path. Winters asked, her expression skeptical. Not predetermined, Derek clarified, recalling the nuances of his communication with the entity. More like anticipated. The predecessors observed patterns in how intelligent life develops technology across multiple species. They created the archives to respond to civilizations that reached certain milestones in a sustainable way. And it responds to you because of some neural resonance. Shaw asked. Derek nodded. The custodian said my brain patterns are compatible with their consciousness framework, whatever that means. Dr. Sato thinks it might have something to do with how I understand mechanical systems, an intuitive rather than purely analytical approach. The real question, Harris interjected, is what we do with this discovery. A repository of advanced alien knowledge could transform humanity's future, or destabilize it completely, Winters cautioned. Imagine the political fallout if one nation or coalition gained exclusive access to technology thousands of years beyond our current capabilities. The custodian emphasized that access would be calibrated to prevent destabilization, Derek pointed out. I got the impression the archive won't simply hand over world-changing technology all at once. Nevertheless, Harris said, the Coalition Council needs to be informed immediately. This goes beyond the scope of our exploration mission. We're talking about potential first contact with a post-human civilization that could redefine our understanding of existence itself. Winters nodded. I've already drafted a preliminary report. The Council is convening an emergency session to determine next steps. Until then, the station is to be quarantined. No unauthorized personnel, no communications about its existence outside this ship. After the debriefing, Derek headed to his quarters to check on Mason. He found his son engrossed in homework, blissfully unaware of the monumental discovery his father had just made. Hey, buddy, Derek greeted him, trying to act normal despite the whirlwind of his thoughts. Mason looked up and immediately noticed the new uniform. Dad, you're wearing officer clothes. Derek smiled, looking down at his lieutenant's insignia. Yeah, I got promoted. Surprise. That's awesome. Mason jumped up to examine the uniform more closely. Does this mean we get better quarters? Tyler's dad is a lieutenant, and they have a viewport in their room. Derek laughed, grateful for his son's uncomplicated perspective. Maybe. We'll see. That night, after Mason was asleep, Derek sat alone in their small living area, trying to process everything that had happened. In the span of 2 days, he had gone from chief mechanic to commissioned officer, from fixing navigation consoles to communicating with an ancient alien AI. His communicator buzzed with a message from Captain Harris. Coalition Council has responded. Full research team arriving in 3 days. You've been officially appointed as primary liaison to the archive. Congratulations, Lieutenant. Derek stared at the message, a mix of pride and trepidation washing over him. Primary liaison to an alien archive of knowledge. It was a responsibility he had never imagined, never trained for. His thoughts were interrupted by another message, this one from Commander Shaw. Mason's new school placement has been approved. He'll join the officers' children educational section starting tomorrow. Quartermaster will contact you about larger accommodation arrangements. At least some good would come from this for Mason immediately. Better education, better living conditions. The boy had endured so much since his mother's death, being shuffled between relatives on Earth until Derek had finally secured permission to bring him aboard the Horizon, the adjustment to life in space, the loneliness of being one of the few children on an exploration vessel. Over the next 3 days, Derek divided his time between exploring the archive with his team and helping Mason settle into his new school placement. The contrast was stark. Mornings spent communicating with an ancient alien intelligence, afternoons helping with multiplication homework. On the 4th day, a coalition diplomatic vessel arrived, carrying a delegation of high-ranking officials, scientists, and diplomatic corps representatives. Derek found himself briefing admirals and ambassadors, demonstrating his unique connection to the archive and trying not to feel overwhelmed by the sudden attention. You've handled yourself remarkably well, Lieutenant, Admiral Chen told him after one such briefing. Not many would adapt so quickly to such extraordinary circumstances. Derek shrugged. I'm just doing my job, sir. Your job was fixing engines, Chen pointed out with a smile. This is somewhat beyond that scope. With respect, Admiral, it's not so different, Derek replied. Whether it's an engine or an alien archive, the principle is the same. Understanding how systems work together, finding the patterns, making the connections. Chen studied him thoughtfully. That's an interesting perspective. Perhaps that's why the archive responds to you. This intuitive understanding of systems. As the research effort expanded, Derek maintained his role as primary interface with the custodian. The holographic entity seemed to prefer communicating through him, though it would respond to direct questions from others. Through these interactions, the research team began to build a picture of the predecessors and their legacy. They had been a species that evolved on a planet now long destroyed, who had achieved spacefaring capability approximately 25 million years ago. Over time, they had established a presence throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors but as observers and occasional guides. Their technological development had eventually led them to transcend physical form entirely, evolving into beings of pure consciousness that existed in dimensions beyond conventional space-time. Before their transcendence, they had created the archives, massive repositories of knowledge strategically placed where evolving civilizations might eventually find them. Each archive was programmed to recognize compatible species and individuals, providing access to knowledge appropriate to their level of development. But why leave anything behind at all? Derek asked the custodian during one session. If you transcended to some higher plane of existence, why care about the species that would come after? Stewardship, the custodian replied. The predecessors recognized their role in the cosmic pattern. All conscious life is connected. To transcend is not to abandon, but to fulfill a different function in the greater system. 2 weeks into the research mission, Derek was summoned to a high-level meeting with Admiral Chun and the diplomatic team. Mason was settling well into his new school and quarters, making friends among the other officers' children and thriving with the additional resources available to him. Lieutenant Vaughn. Chun greeted him as he entered the conference room. We've reached a decision regarding the archive that directly concerns you. Derek stood at attention, noting the serious expressions around the table. Sir, the Coalition Council has determined that the archive represents the most significant discovery in human history. Its potential impact on our civilization cannot be overstated. Chun paused. They've authorized the establishment of a permanent research installation here, with a rotating staff of scientists and diplomatic personnel. That makes sense, sir. Furthermore, Chun continued, given your unique connection to the archive and the custodian's preference for communicating through you, the Council is offering you a permanent position as Archive Liaison Officer. This would entail a full commission in the GCSF with the rank of Commander, with all associated benefits and accommodations for you and your son. Derek blinked in surprise. Commander? Sir, I was a mechanic 3 weeks ago, and now you're the only human being who can directly interface with the most advanced alien technology we've ever encountered, Chun replied. Rank structures aren't designed for unprecedented situations, Lieutenant. We're adapting as best we can. Derek thought of Mason, of the opportunities this would provide for his son's future. A commander's salary and benefits would ensure the best education, the best medical care, security that Derek had never dreamed possible growing up in the reclamation zones. But there was something else to consider. The custodian mentioned that access to the archive would be calibrated to prevent destabilization of our society. What exactly does that mean for how we'll use this knowledge? Ambassador Lien, the head of the diplomatic team, leaned forward. That's precisely why we need someone like you in this position, Lieutenant. Someone who understands both the technical aspects and the potential human impacts. Someone who thinks about consequences. The Coalition Council is establishing strict protocols for how archive knowledge will be disseminated, Chun added. Nothing will be implemented without thorough ethical review and international consensus. Derek nodded slowly. And what about the Krell? They seem to know about the predecessors already. We've initiated diplomatic contact with the Krell hegemony, Lien explained. Surprisingly, they're being quite cooperative. It seems our connection to the archive has elevated humanity's status in their estimation considerably. They're afraid of us now, Derek translated. They respect us, Lien corrected diplomatically. There's a difference. Later that evening, Derek sat with Mason in their new, larger quarters, watching his son excitedly arrange his toys and books in his very own room, a luxury unimaginable in their previous accommodations. Dad, Tyler says you're famous now, Mason said, looking up from a model spacecraft he was assembling. He says you talk to aliens. Derek smiled. Not exactly. I talked to a computer that was built by aliens a very long time ago. Is it scary? Derek considered the question. No, not scary. Strange, sometimes, but mostly amazing. It's like finding a library where all the books were written by people who knew things were just beginning to learn. Mason nodded sagely. Like when I moved up to the advanced math class. Exactly like that. Derek laughed, ruffling his son's hair. Are we staying here now? Mason asked, the question casual but weighted with a child's concern about stability. Derek nodded. Yes, buddy. We're staying. I've accepted a new position. We'll have this home for as long as we want it. Mason's face brightened. Good. I like it here. And Tyler says there's a swimming pool for officers' families. There is, Derek confirmed. And you can learn to swim properly, not just the emergency water survival training from before. As Mason returned to his model, Derek thought about the path that had brought them here. From a struggling mechanic in the reclamation zones to the chief liaison between humanity and an ancient alien intelligence. From barely securing permission to bring his son aboard a crowded exploration vessel to providing him with opportunities beyond anything Derek had experienced in his own childhood. All because Derek understood machines, felt their rhythms, made connections that others missed. All because, when asked to pilot a spaceship as a joke, Because who would seriously suggest a mechanic could fly a starship in combat? He had drawn on that understanding and done the impossible. 3 months later, the Archive Research Station was officially established, a joint project of all coalition nations. The Horizon had departed on its original mission of exploration, but many of its crew had transferred to the new station, including Commander Shaw, who now served as the station's executive officer. Derek, now Commander Vaughn, had settled into his role as archive liaison. Each day brought new discoveries as the research teams carefully explored the knowledge the custodian made available to them. True to its word, the archive regulated access, providing information that built upon humanity's existing understanding rather than leapfrogging it entirely. It's like it's teaching us, Derek explained to Admiral Chun during one of his regular reports. Not just giving us answers, but helping us ask better questions. The first practical applications were beginning to emerge: more efficient energy production methods, advances in materials science, new approaches to environmental restoration that could help heal Earth's damaged ecosystems. Each breakthrough was carefully reviewed before being released to the global scientific community, with special attention paid to potential misuse. The Krell had established diplomatic relations with Earth, their initial hostility replaced by cautious respect. Other alien civilizations had taken notice as well, and the first tentative steps toward a broader galactic community were being taken. On a personal level, Derek found his greatest satisfaction not in his new rank or the historical significance of his position, but in watching Mason thrive. His son had adapted to their new life with the resilience of childhood, making friends, excelling in his studies, and growing confident in ways that filled Derek with pride. 6 months after the discovery of the archive, Derek stood in the observation lounge of the research station, watching as Mason played a complex holographic game with several other children, a game based on educational principles extracted from the archive's early learning sections. "He's doing well," Shaw commented, joining Derek by the viewport. Derek nodded. "Better than I could have hoped. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers our old life." "Children are adaptable," Shaw said, "and you've given him stability despite all the changes." Derek watched as Mason successfully solved a puzzle in the game, his face lighting up with triumph. "That's all I ever wanted for him. A chance at something better than what I had. And in the process, you've given humanity a chance at something better too," Shaw pointed out. "Not bad for a mechanic who was asked to pilot a spaceship as a joke." Derek smiled, remembering that moment on the bridge of the Horizon, the skeptical looks, the barely concealed amusement at the idea of a mechanic taking the helm. None of them were laughing now. "You know what's funny?" he said. "When I was a kid in the reclamation zones, I used to dream about being a pilot. Used to watch the atmospheric shuttles take off from the corporate enclaves and imagine what it would be like to fly. But where I came from, that wasn't an option. So I learned to fix things instead, and became the most important pilot in human history," Shaw finished. Derek shook his head. "I'm still just a guy who understands machines. The archive, the custodian, they're the historically significant ones." "The custodian disagrees," Shaw replied. "According to its latest communication, your neural resonance pattern is unique among all humans tested so far. Something about how your brain processes systems and connections. The scientists are still trying to understand it." "Great. So I'm a biological anomaly too." Shaw laughed. "You're missing the point, Commander. Whatever it is that makes you special, this intuitive understanding of mechanical systems, this resonance with the archive, it's changing the course of human history. And it all started because someone jokingly suggested the mechanic should try flying the ship." Derek had to admit there was a certain cosmic irony to it. His life had been defined by machines, understanding them, fixing them, feeling their rhythms. That connection had taken him from the poverty of the reclamation zones to the bridge of a starship, and now to humanity's first meaningful contact with an advanced alien intelligence. Dad, look," Mason called from across the room. He had completed the highest level of the game, an achievement that had eluded even some of the adult researchers. Derek gave his son a thumbs up, his chest swelling with pride. This was his real achievement, Not the discoveries or the promotions or the historical significance of his role, but the bright future he had secured for his son. As he watched Mason celebrate with his friends, Derek reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. A path that began with a joke, with someone pointing to the grease-stained mechanic and saying, "Why not let him try?" A path that had led to the stars, to ancient alien knowledge, to a future brighter than anyone could have imagined. And it had all started because, when challenged to do the impossible, Derek Vaughn had simply done what he'd always done: understood the system, found the pattern, made the connection. Not because he was special or chosen or destined for greatness, but because he was a mechanic who knew how things worked. That night, as Derek tucked Mason into bed in their comfortable quarters on the Archive Research Station, his son asked a question that caught him by surprise. "Dad, are you famous now because you can talk to the alien computer?" Derek smiled, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I wouldn't say famous, buddy. I just have a job that not many people can do. Like how you fix things on the horizon that nobody else could fix." Something like that. Mason was quiet for a moment, then said, "Mom would be proud of you." The words caught Derek off guard, a sudden tightness in his throat. "You think so?" Mason nodded confidently. "She always said you were the smartest person she knew, that you saw how things fit together when nobody else could." Derek brushed a hand over his son's hair, memories of Sarah flooding back, her laugh, her unwavering belief in him even when he doubted himself. "Your mom was pretty smart herself." "I remember," Mason said softly. "She helped me build my first model spaceship." "That's right, she did." Derek smiled at the memory. "And now look at us, living on an actual space station." Mason yawned, snuggling deeper under his covers. "Do you think the aliens, the predecessors, had kids too?" The question was so unexpected, so perfectly childlike in its curiosity, that Derek had to laugh. "I don't know, buddy. I'll have to ask the custodian tomorrow." "If they did," Mason mumbled, already drifting toward sleep, "I bet their dads fixed things too." As his son fell asleep, Derek remained sitting on the edge of the bed, thinking about Mason's words. Perhaps that was the connection, the resonance that the custodian had detected, not just an understanding of mechanical systems, but the fundamental human drive to build, to repair, to make things better for those who would come after. The single dad mechanic who had been asked to pilot a spaceship as a joke had ended up doing much more than that. He had become a bridge between humanity and its potential future, a connection point between the present and possibilities beyond imagination. And all because, when faced with an impossible situation, he had simply done what he knew how to do: understood the system, found the pattern, made it work. In the quiet of his son's room, with the soft hum of the station's systems providing a familiar mechanical lullaby, Derek Vaughn smiled. Not bad for a mechanic from the reclamation zones. Not bad at all. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.